So we're now, good afternoon, Lino and Jane. It's Noreen Purcell-Dillman here with a Healthy, Peaceful podcast.
Okay.
And how are you both today?
Very well, thank you.
Wonderful. I am so glad that you're available to join me as my guests. And we're going to be delving into what we both consider to be a very important topic today. So I really look forward to it. I'd like to start out just by doing a brief introduction of you both,
Okay.
for our viewers and for our listeners, just so they know where to find you and all the great work that you've been doing and you have done over the years. So, and Lino, I know that you're a teacher and a counselor of macrobiotics, and you incorporate Qigong, Shiatsu, self-massage, and conscious eating techniques into your healing work that you do.
Yes.
You were born in Italy. You're multilingual, and you have been teaching these principles of regaining health throughout the U.S. and globally for decades. You've lectured in university settings as well as hospitals, medical schools, and major corporations. You have many books, some of which include one which we'll be talking about today called the Power Eating Program. Also, you have a book on natural kidney health. And I know you have several books and audios on the importance of laughter to our health. That could be a topic for another session, there's no doubt. And you are here today joined by your wife, Jane. And Jane is also a macrobiotic teacher and counselor. She is a licensed nutritionist. And she has a number of international publications, including one with the renowned chef, natural food chef, Christina Perello, called Christina's Healthy Living Journals. And Jane also participates and leads seminars and retreats in the US and globally. She's the author and producer of many books and co-producer and author with you know, of Energize Yourself audio. You both do provide a number of services, including weekend seminars, alcohol addiction counseling, diet and lifestyle counseling, speaking engagements, healthy cooking, employee wellness programs, meditation and relaxation, as well as customized topics for your clients. And your website is www.greatlifeglobal.com. And I'll include all this information in our show notes so that our viewers and our listeners will have access and know where they can find you and find more information about your publications, your audios, videos, that sort of thing. So, did I leave anything out?
No, I can't believe we do all those things.
Wow.
Yeah, well, you do, so that's great. Anyway, today I'm going to start by holding up this book, which is titled The Power Eating Program, You Are What You Eat. And I remember when I saw this book when I was at the Kushi Institute, when it was in existence in Beckett, Massachusetts, and I thought, oh, I should probably look at that book. And I like the fact that it seemed like it was a relatively short read, you know. And I did read the book at the time, about 4 years ago, and 4 or 5 years ago, and I was intrigued by what you had to say. So it's funny how things come full circle, and now we're having this podcast and this interview about you are how you eat. So I'd like to start out by saying, you know, I looked at this book and I thought, well, when was this book published? And it was published in October 1989. And, you know, that was an important year and a month for me. It was a very, very good month and year for me because my oldest daughter was born.
Oh.
And I was wondering what was happening in your life at that time, and how did this book come about in October of 1989?
Well, I don't remember exactly.
Remember, Robin Brown, a student of ours,
yes.
insisted
Yes,
that it become a book. She had heard the lectures, remember?
yes, yes,
Okay.
Robin, yes.
So
Yes.
Robin was a client of yours?
Yes.
Yeah, she was a client.
Okay.
She was also very interested in not only what I teach, but how I teach it, and was much more because she actually wanted to learn how to eat. It sounds so
Okay.
simple, and actually it is simple, but you have to do it properly. You know, like
Yes.
everything else is not like any other thing, walking or eating,
Sure.
so on.
Sure. So Robin, she sounds like what we would call a coach today. She was someone who kind of pushed you in the direction of actually bringing this book to print.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, that's
So
wonderful.
You gave the lecture, and she recorded it. I transcribed it, and Lino's a super editor. He edited it, and so it was a collaborative effort. We were in Miami at the Macrobiotic Foundation of Florida, a very
Okay.
active center there, and
And
it was a joy to do, and it was bringing together your stories of Lina's survival stories with modern science. I mean, how great is that? So.
Absolutely. Well, I think, you know, when we are involved with a project, if we are collaborating with others, I find that it's much more likely to get to completion.
Yes.
So that's a wonderful story. Thank you. You know, I noticed in the title of the book, it's the Power Eating Program. And is there a reason why you chose the word, Lino, power?
because it's actually, people don't realize how important it is. You can create power. The more you chew, the more energy you have. Energy is power.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so chewing is very, very important. It's important what you eat, how you cook it and how you prepare it, but also how you eat it and how much energy you get out of food, you know?
Yes, yes.
So,
Well, so what you're saying reminds me of something that I heard Deepak Chopra say in talking about what is perfect health. He actually said, if you have the energy to do all the things that you want to do in the day, then that's really perfect health.
Oh, yeah.
So you're equating power, as you used it in your title, the Power Eating Program, to the creation of energy in your life.
yes.
Yes. There's
Okay.
synonyms, actually. The power company with the lights and the energy company. There's synonyms.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that particular relationship, but that's a very good point. It's a very good point that the words can be used interchangeably in certain situations, power and energy.
Yes.
Yes.
And they can each be used for good and bad, for good or evil, as we all know. So we, of course, want to strive to use our energies for good purposes. So there is a passage in Lino's book
Absolutely.
from the
Absolutely.
Bible, from Paul. It says, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." And that was the inspirational too. And then
I think you actually, was that on, what page was that in the book? Do you recall?
page 1.
Page 1. Okay, that's right. Paul the Apostle to Timothy. Timothy. So elaborate on that, Jane.
Well,
That
in
quote.
our readings, neither of us are biblical scholars, but we do come upon these wonderful quotes from our spiritual work and from our church and various things. And so power was just a great word to use, because you're right. If you have the energy, you can put that behind all your goals and your projects, and energy kind of generates more energy.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
There's also a quote by Emerson. I won't read the whole one. It says, "Place yourself in the middle of the stream of power and wisdom which flows into you as life."
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. Those are great quotes. There's no doubt.
And people get energy from your chewing, don't they, Lino?
Yes, you can get.
Yeah. That's I love thinking about power as energy, energy as power. Now, when this book was published in 1989, I think you indicated the two of you were married in 1989.
We weren't formally married yet.
Okay, but you were a couple.
Yes, we were a couple.
Okay, you also said that you chose the name because the acronym PEP, P-E-P, was important.
Yeah.
And that particular PEP in the power eating program is representative of the vitality that comes from chewing.
That's
right.
Is there anything that you'd like to say in regard to that, choosing PEP and vitality?
Yes.
Sure.
Because most people eat just put food in the mouth, they chew a couple of times and they swallow.
Yeah.
And many times, instead of get energy, they feel heavy. Then they don't get the energy out of food. So the chewing is very, very important, especially carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are pre-digested in the mouth.
Right.
That is in the stomach.
Right.
If you don't chew carbohydrate, actually, if you eat too much, you feel heavy and you don't feel energetic. So the chewing make the difference,
Okay. Yeah. So you can,
yes,
particularly whole grains, you can feel somewhat bloated.
Yes.
Without proper chewing.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Carnivorous animals like dogs and cats, although dogs now are omnivorous, they can eat a lot of things, but carnivorous animals have a whole different biological and physiological makeup than we do. So they don't chew the way cows and horses and bulls, they chew and chew vegetation, and they're the most powerful animals on earth. And so we do eat carbohydrates as humans, and healthy carbohydrates. We call them complex carbohydrates. And the key to unlocking the benefit, Lino, is
chewing.
Yeah,
the chewing. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'd love to get into the details of your book. And I was fascinated by the story that you told of your father, who was captured off a ship in World War II.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about what happened with your father in terms of his capture and later being transported to a concentration camp?
Yes, my father was basically an Italian merchant marine on a ship. He was a officer of the energy that producing. So basically, he discovered that when he was put the German want them to continue be in the ship, and the whole crew refused to do it. So I said, fine, you got a choice, either that or you become prisoners of war, and we send you to Germany. And the whole crew decided, fine, it was 32 people, and they sent him. They put him in a wagon. They closed the wagon and they give him one bucket full of water, another bucket for using, for themselves. And they put him there for 3 days. They were on the boat, on the trip to Germany. And in Germany, he was there for 3 years, from 1943 to 1945.
Okay.
So, and then he came home.
And you said this was, sorry to interrupt, you said this was toward the end of the war. So not only was he working many, many hours per day for the Germans, but he was also facing bombing from the Americans at this point?
The Americans were bombing, and the German was very disciplinary, and they really had to do the work whether they like it or not.
Right.
And they didn't have much food.
Sure.
So
yeah. Tell me about his diet in the camp.
basically, the diet was every morning they had a roll of bread, and then they had a chicory coffee, which is not coffee without caffeine, And then in the morning, that was a cup of that. And then they had lunch, a soup, and the same soup they have also for dinner.
Okay.
So,
right.
so there was not much nourishment inside. For one thing, that he start chewing the food, he will get more energy out of the food, no matter what he ate, but especially complex carbohydrates.
Okay. So you said your father was given very little food at this
Yes.
point, and that he made a discovery one day at lunch while he was given a longer lunch period, and he started not only chewing his food but also his water.
Yes.
So tell me more about that.
Actually, it was more the water than the food. He was drinking water. He found out if he chew water, he get more energy out of water. And there's nothing in water. There's only water, So he shared it with the people. Was the crew was 32 people, and everybody said, Tony says, nothing is going to happen. He said, but you get more energy. And two of the people joined him. So all three of them start chewing. And they went in the corner of the barrack, and everybody had their own bowl of soup, And they were chewing. So they didn't talk. They say actually a grace, and then they start chewing. And they were chewing the whole thing. Of course, they were chewing much longer than the other. First, find out that they had more energy, they had more stamina, and they also become more mentally clearer, and also their self-confidence improved. He say start visualizing that the war was over and he was coming home. And exactly as he was visualizing, it happened,
How many men chewed with him out of the 32?
Only 2 people.
Okay, so out of the 32 men in the barracks, it was your father and 2 other men who were chewing.
Yes.
And, when you say chewing, I mean, how many chews were happening per bite of food? What was he finding was the balance where he was experiencing some of these transformational things in his body and mind?
They find out that when they chew more than 50 times, they had actually, first of all, they were not hungry anymore. They become more mentally clearer. And they had more energy. And altogether, physically, mentally, and emotionally, they feel good. They feel much better.
Okay. So it sounds like the chewing in terms of, it was not only helping him to survive, but it was also providing a more optimistic outlook and a more hopeful outlook toward this very challenging situation.
Yes.
Did he
Okay.
chew more than 50?
They chew more than 50. 50 was the minimum. They all agree.
Okay.
Because sometimes when you are too hungry, you don't have the patience.
Right. When you're
So,
having, your rations are so dire as you've described them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So how many
okay.
times would he go up? 100?
they go from 50 up, depends how much time they have.
Okay.
Because the food was served together. Everybody was in line, was over 200 people.
Right.
But they received the food, and then after they sit down in, I don't know, outside or inside the barracks, and they chew. You know,
Okay.
they eat.
Okay.
Most people ate in much faster because they were hungry.
Okay.
And he
Yeah.
said, Tony says, food is food, you know, they told me.
Right. Many of them kind of, they poo-pooed what he was doing.
Yes.
I'm curious, what do you think caused your father to start chewing? What was the impetus? I mean, how did he, have the inclination to start doing that and experiment with what I'll call the art of chewing,
Yeah.
you know?
Intuition, you know,
Okay.
intuition. You know, he was actually born on a farm, and he
Mhm.
know that the cows and the bulls, the more they chew, the more energy they have, you know.
Okay.
So
All right. That's
so
interesting.
he remember how they were chewing, and of course, and so he says he tried himself first alone,
Hmm.
and find out that he was feeling much better. And I say, anybody want to join me? And two people joined him. They happened to be the two people that they were in a ship with him, and they find out that this is actually true. So they
Okay.
continue chewing, but the other
Yeah.
people were hungry, didn't have the patience. You know, when you're hungry, it's very difficult to
Right.
control.
To wait and to
Yes,
really take your time with eating.
yeah.
Um,
And, and and many people die in
yeah.
camp. And at the end
Okay.
of the war, you know, he was sent home. You know, so
Hmm.
he came
Well,
home. He was very skinny. I remember, you know, I hardly recognized him.
yeah.
And then my mother actually was a very good cook. She was cooking, and we sat down around the table, and
Hmm.
all of us was eating together and following my father.
Right. Okay.
I felt much better.
Yeah. So I'm going to, yeah, that's wonderful. I think I want to just go back a little bit on, touch on something you said with your father that, because I asked you the question, what was the impetus? How did he come upon, well, maybe I should start chewing, and that might give me more energy, create more warmth,
Yes,
help me survive this situation.
yes,
But it sounds like he really tied that into his observation of farm animals,
yes,
and that he was very intuitive in terms of observing them and how they transformed their energy through chewing.
yes.
And I'd like to add that
And
something, if I may.
sure, Jane,
Lena, what
absolutely.
you told me, and many of you have seen those horrific movies of concentration camps. They gave the inmates very thin pajamas, striped pajamas that they wore.
Mhm.
Imagine a German winter with no heat,
Mhm.
and you're given cold spring water to drink.
Yeah.
And what his father did, if you drink cold water, you feel it going down cold.
Yeah.
he kept it in his mouth. Do you think that might have been the way he started?
Yeah, that's right.
He kept the water in the mouth, which we all do sometimes with cold water. We just work it around in our mouths and it gets warmer. Because cold water weakens us. It's very popular in America to have ice water at the beginning of a meal, but it's the opposite of what we need to do. And his father warmed the water up, and that sort of started clicking with him.
Okay.
Oh, I have more energy to lift the rocks. They were lifting rocks.
Yes.
And wheelbarrows full of dirt, digging. Weren't they digging and everything in the cold, in the snow?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So initially it was, let me warm up this water.
Yes.
And then he was able to notice that there were changes in his body from warming the water, and then those changes and those observations he carried over into, well, let me chew my food more thoroughly.
Yes.
And it is true that cold liquids will certainly slow the digestion, dampen the digestion. There's no doubt.
Yes.
So let me just change over here. Excuse me. Viktor Frankl, the author, the writer, his book about the concentration camps and his own personal experience, his book titled Man's Search for Meaning, he talked about the importance of hope in surviving the camps, that horrific experience. And he really felt that it was those individuals who really just succumbed and really gave up hope. They were the ones who didn't survive. And that, so it really sounds like with your father's experience that the chewing really gave him the hope, the strength to survive that experience. And I know you also shared with me that only a few of the men from the ship and the barracks actually survived. Could you tell me a little bit about that? Share that with our listeners.
Was 32 people in a barrack, So he shared, listen, if you chew more, you get more energy and you're less hungry. They said, Tony, food, you don't have to chew it. But two people joined him, and so when they received their food, they went in a corner of the barrack and they start chewing together without talking. And of course, once you start chewing, you find out that you start also breathing more, abdominally, And so by breathing and chewing, you increase your energy. I tried later because I ended up in a communist concentration camp in 1949, 4 years later. And I remember what my father shares his story, and I got the same experience.
Well, Lino, how many men from the ship, of the 32 sailors on the ship, there were 3 of them that chewed.
Yes.
Tell me, at the end of the war, when the camp was liberated, who had survived? How many?
Well, remember, it's not only the food, they also were bombing. The American was bombing.
Yes, you told me that. Yeah.
So they was working in the factories and sometime on land, sometime. There was so, and he found out that, again, the more he chewed, the more energy he had. He was less hungry, he mentally was clearer, and also he became more hopeful,
Sure.
And more lucky.
Yes. I'm going to ask you about that. And my understanding is that of the 32 men who were captured and in the barracks, that only your father and the two other men who chewed survived that experience. Is that, would you,
Yeah,
is that
most of
correct?
them, yes,
Mhm.
but some of them also were taken out from the camp and sent them in another camp because
Okay.
they were in basically the German was using them whatever was necessary, you know.
Right, wherever, yeah. But your father survived the camp, and the other two men who were chewing also survived.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, all right.
but many
Um,
others die.
and many of the others died in the camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, they didn't survive.
Right.
Let's see. You also shared with me that your father not only could chew in the mouth, but he was chewing in his belly.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
He found out that if he breathed, you know, abdominally and also chew, he
Mhm.
had much more energy. He knew nothing about what it is, but later on, when I learned
Mhm.
that actually the Chinese find out too, if you concentrate on your belly, below 3 fingers, below the belly button, that's where the energy, the body absorb energy from whatever you eat, you know?
So that's it.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
that you
So
didn't
that
know.
area is
Yeah, there's
right. It's called a hara.
the Japanese call them hara, you know? The Chinese, I don't know how.
Hara, and
Again.
Tantien, the Chinese
sure. And
call
that's
it,
an area that, okay. So they believe that it's important to, when you're eating, to focus on the hara,
Yeah.
which is
yeah,
Yeah.
considered your center of energy.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Um, in your book, The Power Eating Program, you shared that a couple of years later, after your father was sent home from the camp, that he shared his experience with you and your family about chewing and what happened in the camp. Could you share that with me, what your father shared with you?
Yes,
I think you were about 14 at the time.
yes.
Okay.
No, I was 12 actually, but
Okay.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we find out the same thing. So we start feeling better, you know. I didn't have, I had plenty of energy as a kid, you know.
Yes.
I want to go out to play and so on. But
Uh-huh.
I found out if I chew, I had more energy in playing. I was faster. I was playing soccer. I was very fast.
Uh-huh.
Had also energy, also many more self-confidence, and also my grade in school improved. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
everything improved.
Mm-hmm.
Digestion, food, playing, and also sports.
Okay.
And I
And
go ahead.
when you're a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old, I know if my parent had said to me, Noreen, I really want to emphasize the importance of chewing. You know, when I was a teenager, I probably would have, looked at that and said, oh, I, I probably wouldn't have, embraced it at the time, given the teenage persona. But it sounds like you did embrace it, that you took what your father said very seriously about chewing.
No, my father was actually become home. He was very skinny, and they check him up, and he found out that yes, he was underweight,
Mhm.
and however, uh, he was in good condition. You know, he was
Mhm.
healthy. So not only give him more energy, they also keep them healthy.
Mm.
And so he came home. So he insisted that we eat the meal in silence. So
Okay.
my father, my mother, and both of us, the children, me and my brother was younger than me than 4 years.
Mhm.
We had to chew.
Mhm.
We had to chew.
Okay.
And I learned how to chew. And later on in life, for a while, when we went from Yugoslavia to Italy, my father emigrated to the United States. I also started playing soccer, and I remember if I chew more, I had plenty of energy, So
Okay.
actually, when was not in part of the family, I still chew more. And we were out in Italy, and then we were sent to Sicily in a refugee camp, waiting for our
Right.
turn to emigrate. And there, we had very little money, so we actually, you either chew or you're hungry, And the more you chew, the less hungry,
Yeah.
you know. So there also started, I
Okay.
started
Yeah. Yeah.
chewing.
But I think your father also told you, his father told him that if ever you were sick, cold, tired, depressed, chew very, very well. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Right. Right.
And
Those are those, and it sounds like those words of your father's, that advice was very important, because a couple of years later, you describe in the book that you were captured.
No, I was today.
you were captured at the border.
The Yugoslav didn't let you emigrate.
Okay, so you were in Yugoslavia at the time.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And that's the city was Fiume, used to be
Sure.
part of Italy, but then when
Okay.
the Yugoslav took over, become part of Yugoslavia.
After the war, many countries changed names.
Yes. Yes.
So it became Yugoslavia and it became communist, which was
Okay.
a surprise to Lino. He thought
Right.
it was going to be a democratic country. So he tried to escape and then tell her.
So
Yeah, and so you were after the war, you were living in an area that was part of Yugoslavia,
yeah,
and you tried to escape to Italy.
yes.
So tell me what happened when you tried to escape.
Well, fine. We went up to the border, one station before the border. Then we get off the train, and then we went through the mountain, and we saw the city of Trieste. Actually, it was like half an hour down the hill, and so we crawl up and get up, and then when we were near the border, we saw the guard go up and down. So when the guards separated, we run in between the guards. And then they also had another guard ahead in a trench who stand up, and he had a, how you call him, a pistol machine.
He had a machine gun.
Machine
The automatic rifle,
Right.
So stop. So we had to raise our hand, and we become prisoner. Then they put us in a cells, and we wait. And then after they gave me 2-year sentence for trying to escape from Yugoslavia to Italy. So then I become a prisoner, and then I remember all what my father told you, how to survive in a concentration camp, whatever you want to call it. And it worked. All the advice of my father, I put it into practice,
Yes.
And
So only a few short years later, after your father's discharge or his release from the camp, you faced imprisonment yourself.
Yes, exactly the same way.
And you were given a very sparse diet as well. Do you want to describe the diet that you were offered in the camp, in the prison?
Yeah, basically it was the same thing. In the morning we had chicory coffee in a small roll, very small roll. And then we had for lunch, we had a soup, vegetable soup. Sometimes there was some grain inside, like barley. Usually it was barley. And then for dinner, the same thing, the same soup. So there I learned everything from my father. I start chewing. And then I had plenty of energy. As a matter of fact, I start teaching my friends, anybody who was with me in the same camp, and many of them adopted the chewing eating, not talking and just chewing.
Okay.
And it worked. It worked for everybody who used it. Not everybody, many did not want to. And some actually die of starvation because they did stop. At a certain point, you become weak.
Yes, of course, of
So,
course.
so
And how old were you at the time of this imprisonment?
when I was, then I was 19.
Okay, so 19, you were imprisoned, and you share some of the feelings and the benefits that you discovered when you were imprisoned from chewing.
Yes.
You felt more hopeful.
Self-confident.
You were more self-confident. You had more courage.
That's right.
You had more strength.
Yes. Endurance.
You had more endurance. You were more energetic.
And I was more happy.
And you were happier.
Yes.
He even attracted a mentor, another prisoner who was a power figure in the prison, who mentored him. As you know, young men needed protection.
Of course,
And
yeah.
he,
Mentors are important at that age.
oh, they're very important.
Yeah,
And this man taught Lino the power of visualization.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I visualize a beautiful spaghetti meal, and I visualize being in a beautiful hotel. And he taught Lino, like Viktor Frankl said, if you have hope that you can experience the beauty of life again, it helps you. So the chewing, I think, gave you good luck to get a good friend, didn't it?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. I thought that was interesting where you mentioned in your book that chewing, you felt, brought you good fortune.
Yes.
And
yes.
it brought you what you describe as luck.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, even today, if I chew more, everything get much better. Many morning, Jane don't eat so much breakfast, but I eat breakfast and I chew very well.
Yeah.
My thinking become clearer and I have more energy. I want to do exercises. And also, when you chew, is meditation. Actually, is meditation.
Yeah. Well,
So,
no doubt, no doubt.
And it helps Lino attract, it helps me too, but it helps Lino attract good things.
Yeah.
A yoga teacher, a veteran who teaches exercise, physical therapist, all these things come to him.
Even the apartment where we live right now,
Yeah.
It's a house.
is a house. Even the house, we looked for a house for 3 months. Here, they couldn't find the house we like.
Yes.
A friend of mine found this house, but his wife didn't like it.
Okay.
So then we took over, and we are still here. How many years are we here already?
Almost 20.
Well, that's wonderful. That's an example of attracting wonderful things into your life. There's no doubt.
Yes.
Yeah. So, let me just see.
You also become more creative.
Yes, I definitely, I know you mentioned that chewing really opens the creative channels.
Yes.
Yes.
And could you say more about that?
Yeah, the brain starts functioning better.
Yeah.
If you eat carbohydrates or any kind of pasta or bread or anything like that, or
whole grains,
whole grain, it changes into energy in the mouth. You digest much better, and you need less food.
Yes.
You have more energy and more also. You think more positively. Yeah. be guests in the house, sometimes they visit and so on, then we don't chew,
Right.
for politeness and so on.
Yes.
But when we are only Jane and I chew.
Okay.
I chew. Jane, they need much less food, so
Aren't you too?
well, she chew also.
She aspires to be the great chewer that you are, right, Jane?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So everything gets
I've
better.
noticed when I do chew very well, my day goes so much better. And
Right.
I seem to have all the time in the world.
It feels more effortless.
Yes, and time
Yeah.
slows so that, my thinking is clearer instead of rushed and piled on. I guess if we pile on the food, we pile on the thoughts and everything gets messed up.
It gets kind of jumbled.
Jumbled, yeah.
There's no doubt. Yeah, I mean, I really attribute the creativity to, you can't really open the creative channel unless you're in a relatively calm state of mind, peaceful state of mind.
Yes.
And perhaps the chewing will activate, when you're chewing and eating your food consciously, it activates that feeling of serenity.
Yes.
And when we're in the most relaxed state is when we have intuitive thoughts,
Yes.
when we can see the picture differently, and we can really unleash our creative potential, which is infinite, but our thoughts will trap us, So I know that you said in the 1950s you came to the United States, you emigrated from Italy.
Yes.
And that you started a career as a restaurateur. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, I got a job in a factory where they were making clothes. But they pay minimum wages, follow me?
Right.
And they really want a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Really, they took advantage of you.
Sure. So you were working, what state were you living in the US?
No, I was living in Brooklyn, New York. And
Brooklyn,
I was
okay.
in Manhattan, in the West Side. And,
I see.
And I found out the same thing. If I chew for lunch, we had 1 hour lunch. We were working on piecework. I don't know. I mean, they pay you so much for each part of the.
He was in the garment. He was in the garment district.
The garment.
And so they were paying you based on production.
Yes.
And I was producing more and faster and in shorter amount of time, I remember that if you went to the toilet, it cost you about 25 cents in those days, which was like $3 now,
Right, yeah.
So chewing help you everything. Incidentally, also help you sexually too.
Mm-hmm.
As a man, I'm not a woman, so I don't know how it affects her, but I feel more self-confident, and I feel also more masculine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, certainly, energetically, if your body is energized, it will definitely help libido and sexual function as well as all other physical functions.
Yes.
So. Tell her about starting your Italian restaurant, your pizzeria.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
So I was working first in a factory, then I started working in a restaurant. The restaurant, you work not only the wages, but I also the tips,
Right.
Strange enough, I was and I started working in a restaurant that was actually more expensive in Manhattan.
Okay.
And I had a partner, and basically one go in the kitchen to get the food and bring it in the dining room, and the one in the dining room serve it,
Sure. Yeah.
And he was much more experienced. He was about 20 years of experience.
With restaurants.
Yeah.
Okay.
And and I was there. But he found out that when I was giving the check, I was getting bigger tips.
Uh-oh.
He was
Okay.
no. So he was doing now most of the work, and he was sharing the tips, you know.
Okay. Okay.
So I started, the more I chew, the more money I was make, more than
Okay.
I was in a restaurant. So
Right.
start bringing me good luck.
Yeah.
To the point,
Yeah.
actually, I opened my own restaurant, a small
Okay.
one, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in Jersey, you know, and the same thing happened there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was chewing at home. I was a few blocks away from home. My wife, I was married for the first time, and I went to work. And the more I chew, the more business we have. So it
Okay.
doesn't matter what I did. Uh, Chewing bring me more good luck, give me more energy, give me more
Okay.
mental clarity. And even today, you know, sometimes I chew more, sometimes I chew less, but I chew every morning and most of the time main course, you know.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. So, you also shared that you were, when you came to the U.S. shortly thereafter, you were drafted and you served in the Korean War.
Yeah, Northern Korea. I was sent, I was drafted, and I was sent to Korea, you know.
Right. Right.
It was GI, you know. So
Yeah.
and there was an Incheon that, and they are the same thing, you know. I was eating there. I had the same.
Yeah.
We all eat the same food,
Sure.
and I was chewing more, and of course, be the last one to finish the food, you know.
Yeah.
But even then, I was lucky. I got everything went well, you know.
Okay. And it's your early life, your young life was, in that particular period of time was really, um, war was an overriding theme
Yes.
in your life, with your father being captured and in World War II, and post World War II, you being imprisoned as a result of communist rule. And later, when you came to the U.S. and thought, you know, you were going to leave that experience behind, you were confronted yet again with another wartime service. That is there anything that you want to say about your experience with war and service and
Yes.
you
So
know, just
it happened the same thing.
yeah.
I was sent to Korea
Mm-hmm.
for 11 months, and again, I was lucky there too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
He actually told me he enjoyed being in the Army. He was the one who had every button polished and everything straight and neat.
Okay.
And they actually promoted him up to
Yes.
sergeant. And
all right. So
so
you took to the experience like a fish in water.
yeah,
Yes.
and because he had
Okay.
the good energy. He
Yeah.
had that innate good energy.
Self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so important. That's so
And
important.
he still has it at 88.
Oh, that's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 88, but I know it sounds ridiculous, but I feel like maybe 38, maybe 40. I feel very good, you know.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And well, that's a prescription for success.
Yes.
You have the prescription. There's no doubt.
The chewing
And
is the prescription for success. Very good.
But you know, don't forget, as you well know, it's what you eat too. So
well, that is true, and we're definitely gonna touch on that. Let's see. Okay. You also you told me about chewing bringing you good luck, but you also shared your. I maybe using the term spiritual conversion is a little bit strong, but you told me that you were an avowed atheist.
Yeah,
Um,
before that, I was atheist. I didn't believe in anything.
mhm.
After going through all the Second World War and seeing how human beings killing each other and so on and bombing each other, and so I lost confidence, and even if you prayed, it sometimes helps, sometimes did not help.
He was
Yeah.
raised a Catholic, and
Mhm.
then the war did change him,
Mhm.
as it did many.
Yes, of course. So you, as a result of your wartime experiences, you were, I'll use the word, you felt dispirited.
Yeah, but now I'm quite inspired.
Now you're in spirit.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I start believe that is in a higher power. I don't know that there is a God.
Mm.
And the more I pray in the morning or before the meal,
Mhm.
silently, and if I chew and don't talk, forget about it. I got all the energy I want.
Mm.
Just say I got 88, and I feel 28.
Wow, we went from 40 to 28. I love it. And would you say that the chewing has helped activate your spirituality, your connection to spirit?
Yes.
Okay, that's wonderful. Um,
The word spirit has its root in breath, as you know, I'm sure.
yes.
And part of Lino's practice is breathing as he's eating, breathing as he's walking, and holding yourself up when you eat. It's almost prayerful, and just a good posture. And then saying grace. I don't know if you always said grace. You said grace in your family. And later on, when he studied, our teacher emphasized being grateful.
Mhm.
So it's a spiritual practice. And he says in his book that eating is a spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Eating, chewing, eating, it is a spirit. It's like praying.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's you're connecting with the earth, with something greater than yourself. There's no doubt.
Yes.
Yes.
And I know in the book you shared about at some point in the US, you were running these restaurants and you were starting to have your own, you were living kind of a high stress lifestyle. And then you had your own health reckoning.
Yes.
And you, you actually started to work in a macrobiotic restaurant in New York.
Yes. Because
So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how did you go from, running restaurants in New Jersey, being a restaurant owner, to now you're working in a macrobiotic restaurant in New York?
no, actually, I find out one thing that in New York, you get the basic. I forgot how much it was then. I think $35. But if you if you count the tips, you make $45. In those days, 45 or $50 was high wage. It was like now
Sure.
maybe $200. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and I started working in this restaurant, found out the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I chew more of my food,
Mm-hmm.
I got bigger tips, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now it pay off financially, And then
Sure.
after that, my father actually convinced me, say, why don't you open your own restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when I learned how to speak English, then I opened my own restaurant just about 1 block away from where I was eating,
Mm-hmm.
And my father joined me too. So the whole family there, and so it brings me good luck. We actually find the house we want.
Yes,
One
yes,
block
I know.
away. So
That's
no
wonderful.
no matter what I do in life, if I chew
Mm-hmm.
my food gratefully,
Mm.
and I say a prayer
Yeah,
before that, everything happened to me,
right.
including the apartment that I'm right now. This is actually my house.
Yeah,
I bought the house.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, I believe you told me about a restaurant, the Cauldron in New York,
Yeah, it was
a macrobiotic restaurant that you started working there.
yes.
Um, so how did that come about?
I was working actually as on 61st Street and Madison Avenue in an expensive restaurant, pretty good. There I was working only for, serving people,
Right, right.
Then somebody told me, but however, my meal, I was chewing my meal, and one of the waitresses says there, I see you microbiotic. How do you know? Because microbiotic chew. So, so he told me to go on 6th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, and there's a
Okay.
microbiotic restaurant. So that
Right.
afternoon at 2 o'clock, between 2 and 5, we have time off in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I went down there, and as soon as I opened the door, I looked inside. It was full of hippies. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Sure.
but the food was there, beautiful food.
Yeah, yeah.
It was whole grain, and there was soup, and there was,
That was the first
the first
time he could really eat a macrobiotic meal.
Yeah.
He had
Wow.
he had heard
Wow.
about macrobiotics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but couldn't find anything. So this was a huge discovery, like
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was like,
lost treasure.
Yeah.
of course. And well, that's so interesting. So someone, a coworker or someone at the restaurant you were working at
Yes.
noticed your attention to chewing,
Yes.
and then she asked you if you were macrobiotic.
Yes.
And that started your journey into macrobiotics, which has been now many decades.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's just an amazing story that you came to macrobiotics from somebody at your restaurant asking you about your chewing and observing that, well, you must be macrobiotic because of the attention that you give to chewing your food so carefully.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So you could have, listened to her and then just said, well, I don't really care what that is. And I'm not curious about it. But instead, you decided to walk down to the restaurant and you were curious enough to find out more.
Yes.
So that's really wonderful that, you took that next step,
Yeah. I was working on 61st Street in Madison Avenue.
Right.
So I took a taxi, and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe from 2 and 5, there was no service.
Right.
And I opened the door.
Yeah.
And inside was full of hippie people.
You probably overate too.
Right. You were, and you later told me that you actually started working there for them one day a week, or you were learning in the kitchen.
Yes.
Okay.
Then I became actually one of the managers there, and later on, my father convinced me to open a restaurant in New Jersey. So.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And so.
You started off, so he wanted to study with macrobiotic teachers. So weren't you led into that next?
Then I went to.
Yeah, you went to Boston?
Yeah.
Okay.
I became study with Mitchell Cushy, which is the microbiotic teacher at that time, was living in the United States.
Okay.
And, with his wife and so on. And there was a community of microbiotic people, about 500 of them,
Right. And
there I got introduced to microbiotic. And
Okay.
after a while, I opened my own place, you know, and
And you said that was in Providence, and you opened your
Providence,
own?
Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay. It was Macrobiotic, the restaurant?
No, I opened the
No,
microbiotic
but it was
restaurant.
macrobiotic.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And I'm wondering now, you were running, you said a Subway sandwich shop, and you were running several restaurants and owning several restaurants in New Jersey. And now all of a sudden you were moved to Boston, and you've completely
Mhm.
transformed your diet. You're now moving into a plant-based diet, because macrobiotics is mostly plant-based.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what did your family and your friends think of this, turn of events for you?
Well, you know how it is. If you do something different than the other people do, they think you're a little off. You know what I mean?
Right. There was, were they supportive, or did they resist this new change in you?
Oh no, they resisted. You know,
Okay.
but in Boston there was a lot of microbiotic there then.
Okay. So
So
you were able to get support from the
yes,
macrobiotic community.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And then I studied microbiotic, and I became a microbiotic teacher.
Yes. So you started at this time. You started doing your own teaching and your own counseling.
Yes,
Mhm.
You started that in Providence?
in Providence. Yes,
Okay. And you said you later moved to the West Coast, California. Well, we have to complete that part of the journey.
yeah.
So you were in California studying with teachers on the West Coast?
Well, the a teacher in California, Herman Ahara, he
Right.
had a place in San Francisco.
Okay.
Mitchell Cushie had a place in on the East Coast,
Right.
no, in Boston.
Sure.
So I was invited by Herman Ahara to study with him,
Okay.
and I joined him there, and I learned
Mhm.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
He had a little different approach to eating, you know.
Sure. Well, that was wonderful to be able to
Yes.
have that experience to study with two teachers who were giving you different points of view, but it's the same overall
Yes.
philosophy of life.
Yes.
So that was a real gift that you received
Yes.
Yes.
in that regard. So let's see. I know in the book you talked about when a person sits down to eat, that if they state a goal or visualize something that they would like to manifest in their life, and then they eat in a very calm and patient manner. You talked a little bit about that. This particular wish or desire they have is imprinted in their consciousness through the food that they're intaking. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes. Basically,
Yeah.
I 3x5 card, you know. You want to show one? No.
Like an index card.
Index card, you know.
Yeah.
You
Like
write,
an index card. Sure.
you write in the card
Okay.
what you want, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a job, if you want a girlfriend, if you want a
Sure.
yeah,
Like an affirmation.
affirmation,
Yes.
Right.
so on. So this is the size of the card. You
Sure.
write. So I put it in front of my dish, and
Yeah.
then I eat, and everything is written there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I find out I'm still doing it today, you know. And I find out whatever I want, I write it there. You know, of course, if it's there in front of me, I see it, and mentally I accept it, and I eat the food. You know, usually I don't talk when I eat, but unless I have guests, that's a different story. But when Jane and I are home alone,
Mm-hmm.
I chew and I eat. Jane
Mhm.
usually eat much less than I do, and she finishes faster or
Mhm.
anyway. So
And,
Sure,
and
sure.
he also folds it over
Okay.
so that it props right up.
Like a dinner card, like a like a guest card or
Yes.
at an event or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And especially at this time of the COVID pandemic,
Mm.
it's so important to keep hope in our hearts. And you can write down positive statements, and you feed your mind with that as you feed your body.
that's it.
Yes, yes. I think you've hit on something. The importance of health is everything that we digest.
Yes,
So it's you know it's not limited to food. So although food is a critical and key component,
yeah,
but if we're especially in these stressful times, if we have the opportunity to digest peaceful thoughts or hopeful thoughts, I think that's really important. And I know you also said that you become more spontaneous with chewing.
the new ideas come. Supposedly,
Okay.
like right now, when you're talking, I don't. It comes spontaneous to answer your questions.
Right, right. We don't have to force it.
Yes,
Okay.
becomes spontaneous without
Sure.
more sincere, and
Yes.
so everything is better. Everything in my life is better. I sleep better. I eat better. I have better appetite. I have a better digestion. I have a better relationship. I had one before who was not too good, but didn't work out. With Jane, we are together already. I don't know.
I've known you 40 years. I
Well,
went
that's,
to him for a consultation 40 years ago.
oh my goodness. Is that how the two of you met?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And I'm still trying to get my money's worth out of it.
Well, that was a day of good fortune, a lucky day, right?
It was.
Very, very fortunate day.
Yes.
And one of the things we talked about before was chewing. I know it enhances creativity, but do you feel that it also allows you to flow better in your life and to become more flexible? You know how we can become rigid, particularly with aging, the
Yes.
aging brain? Do you think that there's
Yes.
the opportunity to be more fluid, to flow more with your life?
Yes. Instead to try to reason, you
Right,
get to more by feeling.
right, right.
This feel right, and you do it.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
you're,
now, if I feel eating something or doing someplace or even watching on TV some shows, right now I'm more spontaneous, more spontaneous life.
sure. Yeah, that's,
So the same thing applies. I go to bed earlier and I wake up earlier and I have
okay.
my meal on times and everything get connected. And I know you can say my life is now more connected than I ever been,
Yeah, yeah,
And
you're
I
more,
remember I'm over 80, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And I feel like I'm I won't tell you.
Well, before you said you were 40 and then after that you were 40 going on 28, you told
Yeah,
me before.
that's
Okay.
right.
All right. I think both are good ages. So, let's see. Okay. I want you to just spend a moment talking about the physiological things that happen in the mouth with the act of chewing. And I know we talked about this before, and Jane, feel free to. But I'd like to hear about the physiological changes that happen in the body as a result of chewing.
First of all, you feel the food. You feel the taste. The taste improve on the food, no matter what you eat, become more true taste. Especially if they are carbohydrate, if they are pasta, or if they are noodles, or they are ravioli, or whatever it is,
Sure.
So I enjoy the food, eating the food too,
Mm-hmm.
and I get more energy out of it, and I sleep better, and I wake up earlier.
Yeah.
So my whole life improved.
Yeah, and I know, yeah, definitely. There's no doubt that if you're consciously eating, you're going to be in a better position to um, taste your food. But I think what we were talking about last time was we were talking about breaking down the food and the metaphor of the fire. That you want to build, or you want to have the kindling, and maybe speak to that a bit. And
I could explain that.
Go
sure.
ahead.
I think you actually said that, Jane. Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, if you're going to build a fire
Mm-hmm.
and you put big logs in the fireplace and just hold a match to the logs, not much is going to happen.
Mm.
And that's the same with eating big chunks of food. The big chunks of food go down there and the body can't break it up and burn it. We use the word burning our food and burning our calories. And actually, it's a physiological action that happens in the stomach and intestines where there's movement and heat and it breaks down the food. So if you're building a fire, it's, as we all know, it's good to chop some of the wood in very small pieces into kindling.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's easier to ignite the fire, and then the logs can burn better and longer.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with food. Lino teaches that when you break down the food in your mouth, you have to do the work. You break it down because your stomach does not have teeth. It cannot break down the food. You break down the food and mix it with this incredible, wonderful nectar you have in your mouth called saliva. We don't think about how amazing it is. So alkaline, antiseptic, it's wonderful. And you mix that with the food. At the same time, you're pressing your teeth together, and you emit a hormone. So physiologically, a lot goes on when you chew. It's not just some woo-woo hippie thing. It's scientific, scientifically valid. And it mixes with saliva. It mixes with the parotid hormone. Which is rejuvenating, and then you swallow the food and your body is so happy. Oh, I can take it in. I can absorb it, because it's not what we eat, really, it's what we absorb. And you have to do some work up here in the mouth, and that's where the human effort comes in, and it takes discipline.
Sure. So, and you bring up a good point that it's not it's not the assimilation of the nutrients is,
yes.
We don't necessarily assimilate all that we take in, so that's really important. Thank you for that, Jane.
Yes.
And it sounds like chewing can be a great rejuvenator.
Yes.
To enhance longevity.
Yes.
And you also told me a little something about your great-grandfather, which I was surprised to hear. He wasn't featured in your book, but you indicated that your great-grandfather, Lino, was also a chewer.
Yes.
Okay. Would you say you come from a long line of chewers?
Well,
he comes from a Jewish family.
Yes. Your family is Jewish.
Yeah.
And you knew your great-grandfather. He was living.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Back then, people ate quietly. In fact, tell them there's an Italian term for eating quietly. What is it?
Quando si mangia non si parla. When
Oh, that's
when you eat,
beautiful.
when
Don't
you eat,
talk.
you don't talk.
Yeah.
So
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah.
the table,
When you eat, don't talk.
yes.
Okay, beautiful. And
And I
all
know
right.
that that's not possible for every meal. We have
Yeah.
social meals, party meals,
Sure.
but you know, when people are chattering away and talking about some funny subjects while you're
Mhm.
eating, it can be upsetting, you know. So
Yeah, you're distracted and you're not really attending to you're being less mindful, less conscious with your food. There's no doubt.
yes,
Um, I mean, currently, before we talk about the pandemic, we know that we're faced right now with many people who have chronic disease, whether it's irritable bowel or reflux, or many digestive disorders as well as other disorders. Um, do you feel that chewing would be helpful in healing?
Yes,
Okay.
without a doubt.
without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
The more you chew, the more you digest, the more the food change. I believe when you're chewing, actually the food change in whatever your body you need, you know what I mean? And affect the different organ and everything inside become more, I call them harmonious.
You have a more
You become more alive, okay?
okay,
You
right.
digest better, you feel better, you think better.
Mm-hmm.
You can be as slim or as fat as you want.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps everything, physically, mentally, emotionally, and sexually, you know.
Okay.
And chewing has been shown by science to increase T cells, which is the natural immunity of the body. So especially at this time of the virus, we want to strengthen our immunity. At the same time, to choose food carefully so that what we're eating is the most beneficial, organic, whole food. We eat a plant-based diet, but just to eat all the great vegetables and fruits, and we eat some special foods too that are wonderfully healthy, but
Right.
select good food and then chew it well, and you really see a difference.
That's wonderful. And I know, do you mind, do you have a client, without naming any names, of course, keeping confidentiality? Could you share a health recovery experience, clients?
Was
Who-
the person there who referred to us?
Well, we have right now we have a student in the neighboring metropolitan city here in North Carolina who came to us with liver cancer, and that's a tough one, and they're all tough, but
pretty harsh.
It was stage 4, and she had very careful medical care and imaging and diagnosis and care. And as she chewed well and ate the pure food, whole foods, plant-based, she was actually able to shrink her liver tumors. And she was very careful. She emailed us frequently. She asked questions, and we were able, because of her interest and her curiosity, you see, that helped us to guide her frequently, and she's survived when she was told she wouldn't be alive. That's one case, and
that's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Jane. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah. And there are many others with other ailments too.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful story. And I know that we talked about chewing and reducing cravings, unhealthy cravings. Could you speak to that?
Yes, you basically the body needs certain amount of food, but if you chew the food you eat, the body somehow in the mouth, something happened
Mm-hmm.
that you start digesting, pre-digesting. So when it comes to the stomach, it burns right away, produce energy, and you feel good physically, mentally, emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
sexually, and spiritually.
Now,
Mm.
many people, as you're always teaching, have sugar cravings. It
Mm.
seems to be, I guess it's the number one craving, sugar or salt.
Sure.
Sugar is the big one.
Sugar's a big one.
And how does someone with a sugar addiction, we could say, or they just can't stop eating sugar, how does chewing help keep their blood sugar up? Because it's a blood sugar issue, right?
Yes,
Here, you want a sip of something?
yes. I don't have any.
Okay, here. Because Americans really do have strong sugar addiction, and sugar's in everything.
Yeah, it's definitely more than a hidden ingredient. There's no doubt. And so can chewing actually help reduce, if not eliminate, those unhealthy cravings, such as for sugar or alcohol?
There's no question about it.
Okay.
But you
Alright.
have to learn and be patient. You cannot.
Yeah.
I chew everything more than 50 times.
Right.
Unless I have guests.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. So it's really a commitment to
Yes.
your health, essentially.
Let me get some.
And I would like to touch base about the pandemic and.
Let me get some water.
Yes, of course. We'll get you some water and yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to touch base about, we're in the midst of a pandemic with COVID-19, and I know, Jane, you talked about immunity, and chewing enhances your T cells. Is there anything else that you can share with us, our viewers or listeners, regarding COVID-19, chewing, health in general at this point?
Yeah, what I say, the body, if you chew very much, the food in your mouth change. First of all, is that they digest better.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I believe, I don't have any proof, but that actually, you can see the, I call them,
The parotid gland.
the parotid glands
Right.
take the food and change it in whatever your body needs.
The releasing of the hormone.
Yes.
Okay.
So this parotid hormone actually is rejuvenator.
Yeah.
Scientists extracted this from cattle who chew a lot, and people noticed rejuvenation.
Okay.
But the main thing is that the people who have passed away with coronavirus, most of them have had an underlying pre-existing condition.
Yes.
And by taking care of what we eat and how we eat, we can stay healthier.
Right.
And our body has an immunity that fights off the coronavirus. So by chewing, we get more energy. We feel like walking. We feel like getting fresh air, which scientists have found is an antidote to the virus. We feel like cooking good food. We feel like dancing, being with our children, and being with our families, so that our whole lifestyle becomes healthier to prevent illness. And
yeah, you bring up you bring up a great point that our mental health is as important as our physical health. There's no doubt.
it is
in these times. And would you say there's a particular grain that, I know in the coronavirus, there's there's an emphasis on our respiratory,
Right.
whether we have a healthy respiratory system.
Right.
And people who don't are more vulnerable. Is there a grain that you would recommend that's very good for the lungs?
Yeah, brown rice. Brown
Okay.
rice affect the breathing, the lungs.
Right. Okay.
The more you chew brown rice,
Okay.
change into energy, and
Right.
it help the lungs. So you start breathing better,
Yeah.
So
Any particular kind of brown rice that you like or would recommend?
no, in the winter time, usually we eat short grain.
Okay.
In the springtime, we eat medium grain or
Okay.
long
Okay.
grain. Long
All
grain
right.
usually is for the summer.
It's
So,
good for the warmer season. Okay.
Yes.
So seasonal eating is important.
Yeah.
What I love about chewing is that everyone can do it. You can implement it right away,
Mm-hmm.
and it's free.
Yes.
I think, but my question is, what I'm thinking about is, given all of these benefits, why do you think that, and especially the transformation that you've described that can occur in your life, why haven't people caught on to chewing?
because people they don't understand, and they try it, and it is not easy to learn how to chew.
No, it's not.
You chew,
Yeah.
sometimes you eat it very fast.
Right.
You
Right.
pre-digested in the mouth,
Sure.
especially
Sure.
carbohydrate.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And then it changes into energy, and the energy
Yeah.
produce whatever your body needs.
Well,
Okay.
but one of the reasons we've talked about before many times, there are not that many people who teach to chew. However, you do see many articles about slowing down. I see them, but not so often. We don't teach our children. I was a school teacher, and the children had about 15 minutes for lunch. They were stuffing the food in their mouths, bless their hearts. And the food was unhealthy, first of all. And secondly, they were stuffing it. So in America, everything's fast, fast food, fast cars, a busy schedule. In France, the children are fed lunch prepared by a chef on linen tablecloth.
Yes.
And other countries, the children are fed beautiful meals, and they take their time. And the children help out with the cleanup, and they help out. So our culture is a strange culture, and we have an embarrassingly low rating in the World Health Organization on health. We spend millions of times more than other countries on healthcare, but our health is abysmal. So, Noreen, through your podcast, some more people will learn, and they'll teach others to chew. And Lino's book does a good sale on Amazon, so people are learning.
Right. People are searching because our current system isn't working that well.
No.
But that's wonderful. It's really about taking the time, consciously engaging with our food and our meals.
Yes.
Becoming more aware, raising our level of self-awareness.
Yes. Teaching
And
our children.
And really starting with, families and children, and no doubt. Today, we have our percentage of vegans and vegetarians in the US, depending on where your source, it's somewhere between 1% and 3%. And although the organic movement is, it's really has a foothold now in a very meaningful way, we still are a country of meat eaters. do you see possibilities with change? What do you see as the you know, what's going to be the pivot that will really, like the organic movement, create the shift toward not just talking about plant-based, but people actually doing it in their lives? Do you have any thoughts or ideas regarding that?
Yes, because the thing again, somehow, maybe through you or through me or our teaching, people are going, maybe somebody, maybe the New York Times are going to make an article about it, and people are going to start to chew. And the one they're doing, that is going to be self-evident. They're going to feel better, you know. It's almost impossible not to feel better if you chew very well.
What about eating meat, honey? Eating meat,
No,
will that change?
Meat does not digest in the mouth, digest in the stomach.
Okay.
In the mouth, carbohydrate change, you know.
I see. Yeah.
So the chewing is that, and carbohydrate change into energy very fast.
Well, I think the meat consumption will change as more and more doctors, which they are teaching their patients, you don't need to eat meat 3 times a day. Eat some of these beans, eat some of these tortillas, you know, this whole grain. Some doctors are really promoting plant-based. And for 15 years, we taught on a holistic holiday cruise, and we had 2,000 people in the audience, all coming to eat plant-based.
Okay.
Totally actually vegan.
Right.
And there were several vegan doctors who we could name, and wonderful world-renowned doctors.
Yes, of course.
So things are happening, and people are warming up to tofu, for heaven's sakes, and and other wonderful.
Sure.
How about all the nice vegan cheeses they have now?
Yeah, that's really really remarkable. And I think what I'm hearing from you, Jane, is you really see the connection through medical training in the medical community as one of the pivots, one of the things that can really be a tool for transformation, real transformation, and not just. So that's wonderful.
If I have just a second, I'll say that many people come into vegetarianism, as you know, because they care about the treatment of animals.
Of course, yeah.
And once people are aware of what happens to animals in the farming, and not only what the animals go through, which is torturous, but the way that raising animals is the #1 polluter of the water,
right,
the air,
sure,
and of the soil. Now there are documentaries on these wonderful stations they have now, and people will gain awareness. As they gain awareness, they'll make change, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that with the coronavirus as well, that you know, if you can look beyond your own personal situation, there's you're hopefully most people are tuning in, I think, to what's happening on the planet, and perhaps the plant-based will become part of that equation.
Yes.
We certainly can continue working in that direction. So, you know, Lino, thank you for sharing your age. Was it 28 that you said? or 28?
88.
88. I appreciate your honesty in that regard. You definitely are an inspiration to us all. And I want to thank you for sharing this very chewful, that's a play on joyful story, with our viewers and listeners today. So thank you so much. And Jane as well, I so appreciate it. And our viewers and listeners can find you both on your website, which is greatlifeglobal.com.
Right.
And I will include all of that information, links to your website in the show notes, so the viewers and listeners will have access to all of that information. And again, it's been a wonderful time that I've spent with you this afternoon. Thank you so much, and we'll
Noreen,
chat
thank
soon.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you're
Take
doing.
care. I'm just going to turn off the recording. We'll stay on.